Welcome back to round 5. So after we beat the previous D&T player in round 4, we are in a very good position in the tournament already. And now we are facing one true king of Westeros. And regarding the goldfish history, the player is usually playing. Wasn't really sure if I also saw the information, but could be probably that he were also playing A&T in the past at Nauseam Tendrils, and with the addition of the 2 Mindbreak traps in the sideboard, I think we are good prepared for the matchup now. So
Absolutely.
Durus is also very helpful, but the Mindbreak trap can cover some strange situations, especially if we top deck that after they played an early discard spell, for example. And we can also draw into that with the Wirewood Symbiote and the Elvish Visionary. So yeah, it covers a different axis to beat the Storm decks. But it's mainly in the sideboard to address the even faster Storm decks. And that Nauseam Tendrils isn't that fast as other Storm decks. So we usually are able to just cast a discard spell in the beginning of the game, and most likely we are also able to land a Collector Oof on the battlefield if they don't discard it. So I don't really remember if the information was available to me already that the opponent is playing Storm, or if I just kept a hand in the blind. Okay, no. Now after I watched up the opponent, he was also always playing Storm, so um, yeah, I think the starting hand here isn't that great. So we have a couple of cards which are relevant, mainly the Heritage Druid, I would say. And with the Reclaimer, we are able to cover up their graveyard and get our Cradle to get the boost for the Elizabeth Shepherd.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure if we have so good ways to mulligan into. It's unlikely to mulligan exactly into the Collector Oof.
Yeah.
And with this hand, we are able to get the Collector Oof anyway, if we are lucky enough to um, assemble 3 elves on the battlefield. But there is also a way, for example, if we hit the Gear's Cradle with the Once Upon a Time and top deck the Crimson Zenith, we are also on the draw. So there is a world where we are able to get the Collector Oof on turn 2 even. So especially with the Heritage Druid, I think this hand can be very fast. And there's also a world where we can just kill the opponent on turn 3 with this hand. But the weakest card in this hand is the Glimpse of Nature, so we don't need the card here. But yeah, I think we can just try. So we don't have that much to lose against Storm on the draw in game 1. So here we draw the Wirewood Symbiote, which is useless because we don't have the time to set up any shenanigans with the Elvish Visionary
Yeah. I think we
usually.
have to pick the cradle here. We want to try and assemble a
100%.
fast kill with a shepherd.
Yeah, 100%. So this is the perfect card we wanted here. Another way could be the Collector Oof itself, but this helps us finding or digging into cards. And yeah, then I just started here with a Heritage Druid because I wanted to play a bit around discard spell. So the other elves are very good replaceable, so aren't needed that much, especially when we found the Cradle here. With the Shepherd we can activate, but this helps us being very fast, so very important to start with the Heritage Druid in my opinion, to just not get it discarded. But then they just cast the Durus. So the preordain of the opponent, let me see what the card, what the opponent chose with the preordain. So they put one on the top and one on the bottom. So I think if they just play the now I draw the Glimpse of Nature from the top after they discarded the card. But Durus was really bad for them that game because the Glimpse didn't even matter here. So they could have chosen another creature to discard. But this is also a payoff in some situation, and we can set up a board the next turn anyway, and then maybe find a way in the third turn for the Glimpse of Nature if we had it. But here in this situation, I thought about, okay, probably I'm dead next turn. If the opponent just cantrips and discards, and um, I thought, okay, I have to try. So here, oh, not that fast. So here, interestingly, there would be a chance because so here I started with the Klims after I played the first elf to get the double mana, and
Yeah.
here was the idea to create a situation where I'm able to find the collector roof or find the green sun zenith for the collector roof. So, and if I fail to find it immediately, there's still a world where I can use the Wirewood Symbiote and draw more cards to find the collector roof. So then next time here I played the Wirewood Symbiote.
Yeah, this looks like our opponent it feels like our opponent has only one more turn, so they have to win on the following turn, or their window is closing fast.
Exactly. So here it was a bit unfortunate that I didn't found another one mana elf. Okay, that can happen. And then here I think ramping with a Dryad Arbor is also useful to have more mana available next turn. We are very far away, or not even that far, but uh, yeah, I chose to just ramp here to use the left mana and get the Dryad Arbor. And with the elves in play, I would have had 17 damage with the Allosaurus Shepherd already, and with the Elvish Visionary or the Once Upon a Time, there's also a chance where I can find cards to attack for lethal next turn. So here,
Yeah.
interestingly, they just had a very weak draw in general, so they didn't do anything on turn 2 and nothing on turn 3, and then they
Well,
just passed to me having 5 cards in hand.
yeah, that's very weird.
Yeah. So very weird that their opponent kept this hand. So if they didn't really had multiple, they needed to miss something here, but I'm not really sure what it was. Probably they had enough mana, but no payoff already, and didn't had any good redraws. But then I'm asking myself which cards they put on top with the preordain. But only the opponent really can answer this. So here, so here I chose to use the Elvish Visionary to dig into more action like Natural Order
Yeah,
or
you still keep the activation alive with the cradle, so that's fine.
yes. And here the perfect draw, the Green Sun Zenith. And with the Green Sun Zenith, I have already 6 creatures in play. And with the Heritage Druid here, I have exactly 9 mana. And then I can also use the untap with the Wirewood Symbiote. So
Yeah, you can play the Shepherd, which is mana neutral thanks to Heritage too.
yeah, that's true. Not really sure why I'm untapping here a couple of times, but
Yeah, probably trying to figure out the best way to
yeah,
optimize the
okay,
mana.
okay, yeah, exactly. I did it exactly as you described, and I noticed that the shepherd is free here in this situation, and probably if they have somehow some bounce spell or so, then the additional
Perfect.
creature could
This is
matter.
a very this is a very good example why I think Archon is not needed anymore, especially against a deck that is trying to ad nauseam. Because if you are able to put enough damage in, probably getting them, I would say probably getting them below 10, virtually disables a lethal ad nauseam, and they can only value, quote unquote, value. I mean, it's always possible that they kill you, but if they use all the resources to get to find the ad nauseam and get to 5 mana to cast it, probably have to flip a lot of cards, and there's a good chance that in on that flip, at least one card is going to be uh, maybe 2 or 3 damage. So uh, getting damage in is not getting damage in, even if it's not lethal, as you mentioned earlier, before we found the Zenith, would be a very good line too, because their Nausean line would be virtually
Impossible for the opponent,
useless.
yes.
Yes, yes.
Exactly. If he has only 2 life, then also the fetch lands are um, disabled then, so or most of them are disabled then. But here, what I want to mention about Archon, interestingly, I would say that it also depends on the turn we are able to go for the Archon or the Hoof. So in most cases, with our slower build at the moment, we aren't really capable of casting the Natural Order too early. So turn 2 is very rare, and turn 3 most of the time is already the range where we are able to attack for a high amount of damage. So if you are starting, for example, with a Green Sun Zenith for a Dryad Arbor, and then have the Birchel Ranger in hand, then there is a good chance where we are just able to search for a Fairy on turn 2 with a Natural Order, but we are not really able to do that as often as we need to combat the combo decks. But if we have one more additional turn, which we sometimes have, then we don't need the Archon anymore because we have a way to attack for lethal either with the Shepherd or with the Hoof. So depends on how much time we have and how good the possibility is to cast the Nature Order on turn 2. So I don't think that it happens more of 5 to 7% of the games where we are able to have 4 mana on turn 2 and the Nature Order in hand. And that's a good explanation why Archon of Valor's Reach isn't that needed in the deck anymore, because at the time where we are able to cast it, or the Natural Order, then we most likely have the opponent dead anyway. And also the problematic thing is the access to the white mana. So having access to the Virtual Ranger helps for sure to get access to the white mana by that. But on the other hand, as you explained, it isn't needed that much anymore. And other decks where uh, Archon of Valor's Reach shined in the past also have some good outs for the card in the meanwhile. If we are talking about 8 cast or Painter, for example, so they in the meanwhile they just have the bounce land where can use it, or they can just red blast it if you're saying the wrong card type. So
Yeah, I also thought about that when one of the worst feelings in the world is when you name Archon, when you cast Archon name, you get a feeling that they might be holding some LEDs, or you want to stop them from casting Tail Drills, and you name sorcery, or I mean, you make a small mistake and then you get your Archon bounced. That's one of the worst feeling you can get because
yes,
especially if it's a super early Archon like turn 2 or turn 3, it's not gonna come down again anytime soon.
right. And if the opponent bounces our creative beam after we already attacked with it, I think he helps us even a bit. Yeah, but most of the time it just ends the game immediately, so makes more sense. So, any additional notes regarding this game? I think
No, I think
it
stealing
was
game one
very,
is super.
yeah,
Stealing game one is very very important. Is well, it's highly unlikely, but if you are managed to do it, is very. You are very very favored to win. Most likely you will lose game two, and then game three on the play is just high chances of winning after all the cards we have in the sideboard.
yeah, exactly. So the opponent had a very weak draw, and I would say I didn't had a great opening hand, but the cards we found with the Once Upon a Time, and we had a couple of card draws, ways to draw cards. So it was in our favor here in this game. So let's go to game two.
Yeah.
And here in this game, I can at least spoil a bit. So I can say that Mindbreak Trap did play a good role in this game.
Okay, let's see how you sideboarded because I also have some comments on this. Um, so you removed two vicious, two wilds, and all the glimpses. I definitely agree on the glimpses and the rest. My only comment here, I usually like to keep. So I would cyborg probably similar, but I would keep only one symbiote in and keep the third vicio. Sorry, one symbiote out, another symbiote out, and the third vicio in, because I like to have my maximum elf count high, because sometimes just happens they have a cantrip heavy hand and they have to use one or two turns to scope the hand, and it's not unlikely that we can produce maybe not lethal but maybe 10 or 15 damage of shepherd, and that can be enough to stop their nauseam. So that's the reason why I like to keep the elf count high.
Interesting. So yeah, I would also say that any additional elves on the deck can help, especially with the Shepherd, but also with the Heritage Druid. And there are also lines where we are able to cast the Visionary and use the Heritage Druid to get access to the Collector Oof. So this can make sense. And the protecting of the creatures isn't that important because they don't really uh, interact with our elf creatures. If they have removal, they probably just kill the Collector Oof, but nothing else than that usually. But on the other hand, if you have access to more Wirewood Symbiotes, it is also possible to use the combination of the cards here. And sometimes the games can be a bit more grindy than we expect it to be. And then if you have the opportunity to bounce the creature, like the Elvish Visionary, um, you can create more card advantage by drawing more cards. And also, the Wirewood Symbiote also is very useful in combination with the Dryad Arbor. So there are situations, um, and especially in the time where we are playing the Birchlaw builds and the Archon of Vader's Reach builds, there are also situations where the Wirewood Symbiote helps you to go to the 4 mana relatively early if you're able to untap the Dryad Arbor, for example.
Yeah. I
So,
want to mention another argument in favor of the plus one elf on the list, and is one of the most useful ways to get able to make a turn to Collectoruf is tapping three elf for Heritage Druid. So that's another argument in favor of more or higher elf count in the deck.
yeah, probably we are also able to just cut the Wirewood Symbiote entirely, because another argument for the Elvish Visionary would be that we are much more resilient to discard spells by that. It's slow for sure, very slow, but we are much more immune to the discard spells because we see more cards. We just top deck more cards, and especially with the Mindbreak traps, it even makes more sense to me to just keep more visionaries in the deck because we can just tap out and find, if we are
Yeah.
lucky, we can find the Mindbreak trap by that.
Yeah.
But if we are not having access to drawing additional cards, we are not that likely to
F-
top deck it.
funny
So
funny enough, Mindbreak Trap is better off the top than in your initial hand because then it's not weak to discard. So
yes,
having multiple draw effects
yes,
uh, in VCO is good. Again, as in the previous round, I usually don't like to go on 0 on any creature because after all we still are Green Sun Zenith tutor deck. So having that one symbiote in your 60 card is usually useful. Maybe the game sometimes the end games go slow enough when we trade resources until we don't have much left, both the ant player and the elf player. So sometimes, rare occasions, you have the chance to use the BFF a few times. So that's why I usually, and I think this is like a general rule for me. I usually don't like to cut down to 0 on any card.
except of the Heritage Druid against control, but that's a different story.
Even on control, I always want to keep one. Do you remember the round against
Death
Grixis
Shadow.
Shadow?
Yes,
Yeah,
Death Shadow.
I think even against the decks that where heritage is weak, having that one effect, even for one single turn when you want to get the mana and then maybe it dies the following turn, like that's the strength. Like the first copy is always the strongest copy, right? Because we have Green Sunset at our disposal. So yeah, I think that's something I usually keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you for the discussion. So it totally makes sense, and especially with access to the Mindbreak traps at the moment, I would say that Visionary is a bit stronger than before. But on the other hand, I would say, so how likely is it that you search for the Wirewood Symbiote to bounce your Visionary you already have in play to draw cards, if you just can take another Visionary instead? So it is not helping you on mana if you're searching for the Wirewood Symbiote first. Bounce the Visionary and play it again, but we are limited by the amount of Visionaries we have in our deck anyway. So, but we don't have to discuss this in detail here in this video at least. We can
Yeah.
keep that for later, but interesting idea, and thank you for the information. So let's go to the game 2 against the Storm player, I would say. So here, yeah, I think this hand is almost
Very good.
perfect for
Yeah, we
the,
have Disruption, 3 mana to get to Collector Roof, and if the game was longer, we have Natural Order, Endurance can be pitched, can be hardcast or pitched to Natural Order as well.
yeah.
So we can give use to all our cards basically.
In this hand, I think we have a very good planning of our next turns. So in the first turn, we just discard spell. Then in the second turn, we don't need to ramp in the first anyway, but we can keep it for the collector roof. And the natural order would be the pitch, at least in this situation, if we have to react on the opponent's graveyard. Or we can just cast the endurance as well. So sometimes it can also happen to just create an additional threat and attack with the threat. So yeah, I think a Mindbreak Trap would be even better, but as you explained already, they have access to the discard spell and they are able to dismantle our hand with 2 discard spells, for example, and then probably are not interacting anymore with the combo of the opponent. So here, starting with the discard spell makes sense. So here we have an interesting choice, interesting hand of the opponent. And yeah, it was also very interesting to plan the further turns for me because I saw that they have the Flusterstorm and this came up later. It was very relevant and I did made a unconventional play, I would say. Or
What do you pick here? You pick the mana, no, probably not the mana because you cannot pick the both pieces.
Infernal
Is
Tutor or
makes sense.
LED. Both of the cards are on the highest, I would say. But as they already have the Cabal Ritual, I
Probably,
thought
yeah.
that
So they
LED
have already
is
mana in LED, right? If we pick Cabal.
exactly so. No, so what I mean is they have already the Cabal Ritual and they aren't that far away anymore for the threshold. If you see the hand, they have three cards in the graveyard soon. Then they have the fourth card with the Ponder, the fifth card with the Brutal Shelter. They just need, for example, like a Lotus Petal or and a Dark Ritual, and now they are suddenly have Threshold. And then, so here I thought about there are two options for me. So the Flusterstorm doesn't really make sense um, because I have two good cards. So if I were able to get a Zoro Shepherd, for example, the Flusterstorm doesn't do anything, at least against my green cards. Then here, LED, I thought, okay, they have the ritual already, so they are able to create mana. Maybe not enough for going into the ad nauseam immediately, but they can also top deck additional rituals, especially as they have the cantrip. So I chose to take the Infernal Tutor because it was their payoff and they had enough mana, they had cantrips, so I thought they have the least amount of payoffs and then they need to search for a payoff. So here they just play the land and cantrip, not shuffling their deck. So,
Interesting. Oh my god.
and here is a very interesting card to top deck. And then I also already came in the situation where I thought, okay, I don't really like that the opponent has the Flusterstorm in his hand. So here, because he could, there is a good way that he could protect their combo with the Flusterstorm, unless they are going for a LED line relatively early. So if they have, so they just played a cantrip, they drew a random card. So let's assume they probably have like Dark Ritual and Ad Nauseam on the um, top. So there is a good chance that they are able to protect the payoff spell with the Flusterstorm. Not even with this mana, but there are a combination of cards they can have. And they are deciding when they are going off anyway. So then I thought that casting the Green Sun Zenith here for 0 could be a way to bait the Flusterstorm out of the hand. But as they are kept the cards on top, um, they decided to not react on that.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to take that fluster out of their hand, either bait it through some spell, because that probably, if they keep one blue up all the time, which they will likely do, because flusters, I mean, such a strong card,
Mhm.
um, it's another way to fight Mindbreak Trap, that or this card. So we really need to bait that fluster out of their hand.
Yeah, and now when we see the replay, I would say that probably playing the Green Sun Zenith for 1 would be the best choice here, because with 1 I could have access to Alizar's Shepherd, and then they cannot really use the Flusterstorm anymore. But then, in the end, uh, I think they get use of the Flusterstorm somehow anyway. So the worst situation for me would be they go off and they protect their combo with the Flusterstorm. So I needed to create a scenario where they absolutely need to play the Flusterstorm. And as I have the natural order here, there's also a way where I'm able to play through the Flusterstorm if I have a Shepherd, for example. But yeah, probably the most likely situation where they use the Flusterstorm is if I just search for or try to search for the Allosaurus Shepherd, because that shows to the opponent, okay, they get a Shepherd, and it gets useless now. And here I decided to fake that I don't have mana, or I didn't show any additional mana here, and played it for 0 to get more mana. Yeah, but as I explained, the opponent knew the top cards, and they probably wanted to keep those cards, so they didn't react on this bait here. And here I needed to hope that they don't have a discard spell on the top, or they go for the combo without mana up,
Mm.
or discard the Flusterstorm with the LED on the stack, for example, or I mean with a spell on the stack. But here they only cantripped a couple of times, and
Really
then
interesting. You went for the Dryad Arbor because I think we have to make our plays considering they might or might not cast the Fluster, and I think getting the Dryad Arbor here is not such a high impact. I would say that maybe was as you mentioned, maybe even the Shepherd, even just a Reclaimer to get rid of the because it's a good debater, or just conserve the Green Sun for a potential oof because if you cast a Green Sun for 2, that's gonna get countered 100% even if they want the top card of their deck.
yeah, exactly. So there I didn't plan it enough ahead, so I thought that faking that I am short on mana indicates or is reason enough for the opponent to react on that. But they probably thought that the top cards of the deck are more important. So here I decided or needed to go for the um, adding an additional Arbor. So if I have also very good with this line with the Arbor is that if I have access to a GS Cradle at any time, I'm able to play through the Flusterstorm. Also very interesting with the Endurance. So maybe in the first hand it seemed that I couldn't have enough mana, for example. Then I could evoke the Endurance. But yeah, the Flusterstorm is very problematic because I have the protection here, and I don't want to get my protection countered with the Flusterstorm.
Yeah.
So here I decided to just play 2 creatures. And here I kept 3 mana up for casting the Endurance. And with the Endurance I have a good clock in play. So I can play it with mana to interact with their graveyard. And if they don't do any relevant things here, which they didn't, even after casting multiple cantrips. So here in this game, they cast 5 cantrips already, but they didn't have any payoff. So discarding the Infernal Tutor seemed to be a very good choice in this situation at least. So here I decided to use my mana to cast the Endurance. I just wanted to have a clock in play. So, and here, what is better
Yeah,
than
this is a very good situation, I think, right now.
yeah, what is better than 1 Mind Break Trap? 2 Mind Break
Oh my
Traps.
god. No. No.
Yeah, and here I thought I can't ever lose this game if I get the Flusterstorm out of the hand. And then here, um, yeah, here I
I mean, even
thought,
even if we have to cash one trap for the fluster, we keep the second one in hand, and we are in a very good position.
yeah, yeah, and with the combination of discard spells in stack also, so I thought if if I if the Flusterstorm is gone, then they maybe have another way or a discard spell to show if the way is clear. But I needed to get rid of the Flusterstorm here, so I decided to play the Natural Order into the Flusterstorm. Because I thought there is no way that I lose this game with the 2 Mindbreak Traps if the Flusterstorm is away. So here I think it was okay to do that. I could also maybe wait a bit and hope to draw more lands, but I thought
I
that,
would probably have tapped. So how did we tap here? We tapped
so I had
with
available 5 mana available at this situation, and I needed to, if I had needed 1 mana for the Birch Lore here on the Heritage, I needed to tap all those elves, and with this line I was able to attack for 5, but if you tap it otherwise, you can only attack for 4.
yeah. That's what
So
I was
you
looking
get
at that exactly.
you
Yeah,
get
that's perfect.
one more additional damage by that. And
Every
here,
point of that, to be honest, every point of damage is very extremely important if this matchup because it represents multiple draws of the ant opponent.
yes.
And here, as you described, they might have one more piece of permission, but they will just realize it. They have second mind break trap.
Yeah, okay. Maybe in the beginning they wondered why I played the Flusterstorm into the sorry, I played the Nature Order into the Flusterstorm. But
Yeah, now they know.
with both of those cards, I think that makes sense, and yeah, it worked out very good. So because here in this situation, if I wait, I could have wait to get more mana to be sure to resolve the natural order, but there would have been a way that the opponent, okay, he has very few cards in his hand, but there would definitely be a way, especially if the graveyard wouldn't have been removed here. They could have had Threshold, and they just keep the mana up for the Flusterstorm, and then the main break trap doesn't work. So, but it depends on the draw and the exact line they take. So here, oh sorry, that was a bit too fast. Here I thought about, okay, now I have the third elf, and then I can try to find
Collector
Collector
of,
Oof.
yeah.
Exactly, to get Collector Oof.
Maybe at this point, because even if you find Collector of, you will not be able to cast it this turn, and they are already at 11. So I think maybe here I value more
Attacking.
the 2 extra point of damage. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the 2 additional turns. Uh, or sorry, no. Then let's do the math here. So the opponent is in 11, and now I attack him for 4, so he goes to 7. And with my
Yeah.
actual board state, I have already 7 damage on the board. So usually you're right. The additional damage can matter, especially with the ad nauseam lines, but it doesn't change the clock for me. So I can use those elves, attack for 4 if I miss, and have lethal on the next turn anyway. So I'm not really sure if there's a big difference to use the mana and to cast the Once Upon a Time. But if they are already at 7, let's assume, okay, I miss, they go to 7 or to 8. Maybe I find another elf, for example, and then the ad nauseam is really weak already. And also I still have the protection here. So even if they have discard spell into ritual, into ad nauseam, um, yeah, they're already at 8 life or maybe even 7. So I would say it's way weaker than normal. And there is a lot of potential that they just fizzle, especially if they find a relatively high um, mana value card relatively early. So I think going for the Collector Reef here is fine because it covers even more spots. And then they... So interesting. So in this game, in the first game, they almost did nothing and didn't cast any cantrips. Sorry, here it was also a good situation. I wanted to stop. But I wanted to say in the first game they didn't, or they just played one preordain, but here in this game they played 8 cantrips total. So
Wow.
five earlier, but they were all also shuffled into the deck here
Yeah,
on the
probably they're
bottom.
trying to maneuver around the Mindbreak trap with trying to find some discard or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but interestingly, they played so much cantrips in this game, but didn't find a way to go off. So was very unfortunate for the opponent, I would say. So with this amount of cantrips, you should find your payoff somehow, but they didn't. So and here, what I wanted to say here was very interesting because um, they knew that they have the Mindbreak trap, and in the beginning they started with the Dark Ritual. And in this situation, I thought, so I knew that they had the Lion's Eye Diamond earlier at least. So here it was interesting for me because I thought, okay, if I counter the Dark Ritual here, they don't have enough mana because I assumed they still have the Kaba Ritual, but they must have put away the Kaba Ritual probably with a Brainstorm here. And I was debating about, is it worth to counter the first Dark Ritual uh,
Yeah.
to to be
This
sure
is
they
a
don't have the initial mana,
this is
especially.
the strength of Ant, right? Knowing when to counter, when to apply the pressure is very hard for the opponents.
Yeah, especially because they had, or I thought about that they still have the cover ritual, then they wouldn't have any initial mana anymore for this turn, and I have him dead on board already. But then I thought, so here in the situation, they still had 1 black mana up. So if they had a discard spell to protect from a mind trap, they could have easily just played the discard spell first and then cast the ritual, then the another ritual and the payoff. So
Yeah. But I
I think
think they
it
don't
was
have
very
it.
important.
If they sequence it this way, probably they don't have the discard, right?
Yes, exactly. That was what I noticed then, because they would have definitely started with the discard spell first. If they were short on ritual mana, they could have started with the discard spell first. It doesn't make sense to sequence it like that, that you start with the first ritual and then play the discard spell and then another ritual, for example. So here I said, okay, I just wait to see what he does. There's also a world, there could have also been a world where they probably were able to go for like an Empty of Warrens line or something like that. So I think not interacting with the first ritual is correct because it doesn't make sense to start with the ritual over the discard spell
Yeah.
because they weren't short on black mana here
Yeah,
because they
I don't really know what their plan was. They were working with perfect information,
yeah.
and they turned on the trap for the Infernal Tutor. So it's weird for me at least because they knew about the trap, right? So
Yeah, but they needed to do that because they weren't able to play around the trap anyway.
hmm
So here, and they were dead on board because I attacked him to 7 and I have exactly 7 damage on the board. And it was a good play from the opponent because he didn't had any alternatives. And maybe there is a way that I can, or I think that countering the Dark Ritual is good enough because I thought he has the cover ritual, and like that he wouldn't have been able to have the initial mana he needs to cast for an Infernal Tutor, for example. But there are also lines involving like Past in Flames or something like that. So keeping the Mindbreak prep here is very useful. But also here I have to mention that it's very lucky to top deck 2 of them, and was a bit unfortunate on the other hand because I should have been able to play around the Flusterstorm usually because of the Allosaurus Shepherds and the Cradles. So I could have won already in a other game, but here I won't complain because yeah, I had the ultimate protection against their combo, and also had a decent clock here, especially also with the endurance. So that's also very important to notice when you play the endurance or when you keep it in your hands. And in this situation, I thought that I won't get him with a Pass and Flames line anyway, but increasing the clock was the most important thing to me, and it made a big difference to just have 3 additional power on the board. But in the end, I would say that playing the Green Sun Zenith for 0 was wrong, and probably should have played it for 1 to indicate to the opponent that he will never use his Flusterstorm again if I do that. And in this weekend, the decklist from the Saturday event wasn't published already, so probably he can get his information on Twitter. But on the Goldfish decklists, there weren't any Mindbreak traps already, so they couldn't even be sure that they have the Mindbreak trap.
Yeah, but I
And
think they
then
know the elf plays usually go back and forth between the duresses and the mindbreak traps. Depends on the weekend. I think there's enough information in the previous lists that indicates mindbreak trap is usually on our sideboards now and then. So
sometimes
yeah,
yes, oftentimes no, but yeah, he could assume that we could have access to the card, but he couldn't be sure that I have access to the card. And then if the Shepherd is already in play, then he needs to think that he will never counter. So Glimpse of Nature gets sideboarded out anyway, but he will never counter a Nature Order with it. But maybe he would have still kept the Flusterstorm because it also protects him from further discard spells, or at least makes it a bit harder for us. So
yeah. I think the best use of Flusterstorm probably, in my opinion, is just trade it early in the game for a turbo oof Green Sun Senate, or for an early discard after we play a couple of elves and then finish the turn with black mana into Thoughtseize. So that's probably the best use of Fluster. I don't think they really bring it in to fight over Mindbreak Trap, but it's just a bonus that align in that way. Usually, I think they I think usually we present some window where they can use the Fluster, because on this matchup we really want to cast the Green Sun for 2.
yeah, I think that Flusterstorm is much more helpful for the A&T players, in opposite to like Veil of Summer for the TES players, so they can protect them from Thoughtseize by that. And Flusterstorm does the same most often also, at least if they are on the play. But I would say that Flusterstorm has a much more use against elves because, as you explained, sometimes they can even get us if we are starting with a Once Upon a Time, and especially with the ramp from the um, Green Sun Zenith, or searching for the Collector Roof, and obviously the Nature Order. But yeah, very good to be able to just be fast enough here to giving the opponent not that much time. But I would say that the opponent was very unfortunate in both games. So game
Yeah,
one,
and we were very lucky too by drawing double Mindbreak Trap.
yeah,
So yeah,
in game one the opponent should have probably mulliganed, but this game they cast 8 cantrips if I count correctly, and somehow didn't choose the right combination of payoffs and protection cards or ritual cards. So very lucky to get that match. And it happens very rarely to beat Storm 2-0. So
yeah, it's just a matter of luck, I think.
yeah, especially the pre-board games are very hard and the post-board games are much better,
Yeah,
especially now with this version, but still not that easy to win 2-0 or at least 2-1. So very good start here with the 5-0. So as I knew the tournament has 7 rounds. So here I have the 5-0 and I am second place at the end of this round. So, any additional notes regarding this match, or should we go to the 6th round?
Yeah, I think we're good to go to the round 6.
Very good.